Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack the stories that forged our world. Today we're zeroing in on those monumental figures who literally redrew the maps of their era. Individuals whose sheer willpower created nations out of contested lands. We're talking about the rare few who didn't just inherit a kingdom, but effectively, invented one. For this deep dive, we're journeying back to the 12th century to explore the life of Afonso Henriques, the man credited with forging Portugal. His is a story rich in historical fact, but also deeply interwoven with powerful, captivating legends that have shaped a national identity for centuries. Our mission today is to explore the golden years of his long and transformative reign. We'll focus on the critical events and strategic decisions that turned a small, often embattled county into an independent kingdom. We'll navigate a landscape where verifiable history meets those powerful narratives that define a people, all drawing from the compelling sources you've shared. Get ready for surprising strategic moves, fierce battles, unlikely alliances, and the very personal struggles that defined his path. It should give you a unique perspective on how a nation truly comes into being. Okay, let's unpack this right from the beginning. And we start with a bit of a historical mystery, actually. Afonso Henriques' exact birth date. Still debated. Sources suggest anything from, 1106 to 1111.
That's right. And his birthplace, too. Viseu, Guimarães, Coimbra. It's unclear, though tradition often links him to Guimarães, perhaps for, romantic reasons. But what's truly fascinating here isn't just the uncertainty. It's the early influences that shaped him. From a young age, he was educated under Igas IV OIO. He was essentially a powerful noble who became his mentor and foster father.
Fun.
And this relationship, it wasn't just schooling, it was about forging an unbreakable loyalty. It really highlights Afonso's early grasp that a ruler's power isn't just birthright. It's also about cultivating this core of devoted, influential allies, a crucial insight for any leader trying to build something, from the ground up.
So his father, Henrique of Burgundy, dies in 1112, Afonso still a child, and his mother, Teresa, steps in as regent. What kind of regent was she? Was she just keeping the seat warm, or?
Oh, Teresa was far more than a placeholder. Definitely not. She was incredibly ambitious. She styled herself Queen of Portugal from as early as 1116.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, this wasn't just about governing. It was a clear power play. It often put her at odds with her half-sister, Urraca of Leon. Then, when Urraca died, Afonso VII, who now grandly called himself Emperor of all Hispania, he upped the ante. He demanded Portugal's vassalage.
Meaning submission, basically. Portugal as a dependent territory.
Exactly. He wanted them under his thumb.
And this external pressure was hitting at the same time as internal divisions were growing, right? Teresa's alliance with powerful Galician nobles, particularly this Fernam Percherestrava, that didn't sit well locally.
No, it really started to alienate the local Portuguese nobility. They saw their own interests, their own power being sidelined.
So perfect conditions for discontent.
Precisely. This created fertile ground.
Yeah.
The native Portuguese nobility, led by figures like Igas, they coalesced around the young Afonso. They saw him as their best hope, maybe their only hope, for achieving real autonomy, securing their own influence, free from both Leonese and, importantly, Galician domination.
So Afonso gets knighted in Zamora in 1125. He's a young man now. And by late 1127, he openly defies his own mother. This wasn't just teenage rebellion, was it?
Far from it. No. This act was a powerful symbolic declaration. It was emancipation for the county of Portugal itself, a direct challenge to those powerful Galician interests his mother had aligned herself with. It was the first clear, decisive step towards Portugal forging its own separate identity.
And that defiance really lit the fuse for a truly pivotal moment. The Battle of Somamed happened on St. John's Day, 1128, near Guimarães. This was Afonso squaring off directly against his mother, Teresa, and her Galician allies.
Yes, and his decisive victory there, it wasn't just a military win on the day. It utterly solidified his authority over the county of Portugal. There's a source that puts it perfectly. With this victory, a dynamic was created that would inexorably lead to the independence of Portugal. It really marked a turning point. His rule became, unquestioned within the county's borders.
But here's an interesting strategic detail.
Yeah.
He didn't immediately slap the title king on himself.
No, he didn't.
For over a decade, right? Between 1128 and 1139, he carefully avoided both countess, which would sound too subservient to Leon and king. Instead, he used titles like prince or infante, strategically ambiguous.
Very much so. Essentially a royal son, but one who wasn't yet a recognized king. He was navigating a very, very tricky political landscape, buying himself time, building his power base.
And his next move was equally clever, showing his long-term thinking. In 1131, Afonso makes a pretty radical decision, shifting his court from Guimarães all the way down to Coimbra.
Yes, that was huge. It wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a profound strategic repositioning.
So what was the genius behind that move? What did Coimbra offer that Guimarães didn't?
Well, several things. Firstly, Coimbra allowed him to distance himself physically and politically from those powerful northern nobles. They were his supporters, sure, but they could also exert maybe too much influence on his nascent power.
Control issues.
Exactly. And crucially, Coimbra was much closer to the Islamic frontier. That made it an ideal military base for his future southern conquests. Plus, this new capital became a hub for intellectual and spiritual influence, too. He established the Mosteiro de Santa Cruz there, and that attracted brilliant minds, key figures like Santo Antonio and João Peculiar, who then became vital allies in his quest for both religious and political independence from the wider Iberian powers.
Okay, so the pieces are moving. Then comes the Battle of Henriques, July 25th, 1139. Afonso scores this legendary victory against Muslim forces, a battle whose exact location, interestingly, is still debated today, adds to the mystique, I suppose.
It does, but the impact was undeniable. This triumph was immediately followed by his acclamation. His own followers proclaimed him King of the Portuguese right then, starting from 1140. There's a powerful tradition, maybe legendary, maybe not, but certainly enduring, of him being hoisted up on his shield right there on the battlefield.
Classic image.
Yes, possibly already displaying his new royal arms. It symbolized this new royal status. It was a self-declared, incredibly audacious step towards full sovereignty.
So he's declared himself king after Henriques. Bold move. But in an era where titles meant absolutely everything, how much weight did that self-proclamation actually carry? Was it enough? Or did he still need more?
That's the crucial point, isn't it? Internally, it was a massive morale booster, a clear declaration of intent, but external validation, absolutely essential. That came, partly, at the Conference of Zamora in 1143. Now, some sources question if a formal treaty was signed at that specific meeting.
Right.
But importantly, Afonso VII of Leon did recognize him as king around then. This was politically smart for Afonso VII, too, actually. Aiming for that grand title, Emperor of all Hispania, he needed vassal kings under him. It created an opening for Afonso Henriques.
An opportunity he seized immediately.
He did. He swiftly followed up by sending a letter directly to the Pope, declaring himself a Knight of St. Peter. This kicked off what would become a decades-long process, a real diplomatic slog, to secure full papal recognition for his new kingdom.
Okay, so he's got a self-proclaimed kingdom, some initial recognition. Afonso doesn't hang about, does he? He pushes south immediately, eager to define Portugal's borders. He consolidates control over Leiria in 1145 and then turns his attention to the really strategically vital city of Santarém.
Yes, and the conquest of Santarém in March 1147 was just a masterclass in swift, decisive action, a night assault. Just 250 of his men scaled the walls in the dark to open the gates.
Incredible.
It really was, and absolutely crucial for securing the northern frontier from Moorish incursions. It removed a constant threat to Coimbra and Leiria. Soon after that, he also won the Battle of Sacavém, fought against a much larger Muslim force, apparently, despite taking heavy Christian losses himself. It further solidified his position.
And this is where things get really interesting, where external events suddenly provide this incredible, maybe even miraculous, window of opportunity. The fallout from the fall of Edessa in the east, which prompted the Second Crusade. How did Afonso manage to harness that global energy for his very local cause?
It was brilliant strategic opportunism, just brilliant. A huge fleet of crusaders. We're talking Flemish, Norman, English, Scots, Germans, around 164 ships, suddenly arrives in Porto.
Just happens to show up?
Well, not entirely by chance. The Bishop of Porto convinced them to pause their journey to the Holy Land and join Afonso Henriques, who had already marched south with about 15,000 of his own men. And sources suggest this wasn't pure coincidence. Afonso's envoys had likely specifically appealed to influential figures like Bernard of Clairvaux, asking for crusader support to aid the Christian reconquest right there in Iberia.
Smart. So the stage was set for the epic siege of Lisbon. It began in June 1147 and lasted, 17 arduous weeks?
A long, hard slog. We have vivid accounts, actually, like a letter from an English crusader named Osberno. He quotes Afonso's own letter to the Bishop of Porto, clearly showing the king's foresight. Afonso wrote something like, "Afonso, King of Portugal, if the ships of the Franks arrive, come in their company to me near Lisbon." He was ready for them, and Lisbon itself. Heavily populated, well-provisioned, with a garrison of maybe 15,000 soldiers. It was an incredibly tough nut to crack.
Now, these crusaders, let's be frank, they were often a mercenary bunch, weren't they? They were promised generous plunder, tax benefits, land, autonomy if they chose to settle afterwards.
Indeed, they needed incentive, and the siege's dramatic climax really highlights this tension. It involved building this massive 25-meter siege tower. When the defenders inside, starving, riddled with disease, finally requested a 24-hour truce to negotiate surrender, the Crusaders nearly revolted.
Right.
They were terrified they'd lose their promised plunder if terms were agreed. Afonso had to step in, firmly assert his authority. He threatened to withdraw his own Portuguese forces if the agreement wasn't honored. It effectively prevented total chaos and probably a lot more bloodshed, shows his remarkable leadership, keeping control over such a diverse, often unruly army.
And then, after the city finally fell on October 20th, his actions were quite remarkable for the time. No general massacre, apparently.
That's right. Inhabitants were allowed to keep their personal belongings. It was very different from the typical brutal sacking you often saw in medieval conquests.
So not just compassion, but maybe brilliant statecraft, too, thinking long-term.
Absolutely. Afonso clearly understood that a degree of clemency could secure long-term loyalty and integration far more effectively than just brutal conquest. It set a crucial precedent for how his new kingdom would govern its diverse populations. The cross was raised over the castle on October 25th, sealing the victory. And significantly, Gilberto of Hastings, an English crusader, was elected Bishop of Lisbon. But, and this is key, he was placed under the jurisdiction of the Archbishop of Braga, not the powerful Archbishop of Santiago de Compostela in Galicia.
Ah, consolidating Portugal's religious independence, too.
Very clever. Precisely. Afonso also founded the Mosteiro de São Vicente de Fora on the site of his siege camp, fulfilling a vow he'd made.
Now, beyond these direct military campaigns, Afonso also leveraged the power of those religious military orders, Templars, Cistercians, turning them into vital extensions of his kingdom building. How did they become so effective?
Well, these orders weren't just soldiers or monks. They were effectively self-sufficient, highly motivated extensions of royal power. Granting them vast tracts of land, especially on the frontiers, was brilliant. They defended it with, zealous fervor. They developed it economically, cleared forests, built farms, and in doing so, they solidified the new kingdom's borders and infrastructure in places where Afonso's direct resources were stretched thin.
So they were like state-sponsored pioneer developers with swords.
Kind of, yeah. The Templars, for instance, became absolutely crucial in defending the line between the Mondego and Tajo rivers. They built impressive fortifications like the amazing castle at Tomar under their master Goldim Pais. The Cistercians, meanwhile, were granted huge territories, most famously Alcobaça. Their job was more about agricultural development and encouraging settlement. The Order of Santiago also played a part. They were all key. #4, external pressures, internal governance, and final validation.
So Afonso's reign, as you can imagine, was just this constant juggling act, marked by ongoing, really complex relations with the neighboring kingdoms of Leon and Castile. He even had this tricky relationship with his own son-in-law, Fernando II of Leon. Family and politics rarely mix smoothly, do they?
No, and the political climate remained incredibly treacherous. Get this. At one point in 1158, Castile and Leon actually drew up an agreement, the Convenio de Sahagún, with the explicit aim of dividing Portugal between them.
Seriously, just carve it up.
That was the plan. But Afonso, ever vigilant, ever the fighter, he responded with a series of border wars. He successfully regained territories like Toronto and Lumia from Leon, constantly pushing back against these attempts to basically reabsorb his nascent kingdom.
Then came that fateful siege of Badajoz in 1169. That proved to be a real turning point, didn't it? Not just for the campaign, but for Afonso personally.
A massive turning point. He was besieging the city with this renowned mercenary, Geraldo Sem Pavor Gerald the Fearless. But then Afonso found himself caught, trapped between the Muslim defenders inside Badajoz and an arriving army led by his own son-in-law, Fernando II of Leon, who claimed Badajoz belonged to him by treaty.
What a nightmare scenario.
Exactly. And during his escape attempt from this trap, Afonso suffered a really severe leg injury. He actually broke his leg badly, and he was captured by Fernando.
Captured by his own son-in-law.
Yes. Now, apparently, he was treated with dignity, given medical care, but his release came at a very steep price. He had to return all the lands he had recently conquered from Leon, including chunks of Galicia and Extremadura. And that injury, it was profound. It effectively ended his active military career. He was around 60 years old. It forced a major shift in his focus away from the battlefield and towards internal consolidation.
So with his campaigning days essentially over, What did that mean for governing this young kingdom he'd fought so hard for?
It meant digging in, strengthening the internal administration. Afonso really pivoted. He promoted municipalism, granting royal charters or forays to towns. This fostered local governance, economic activity, and, importantly, loyalty directly to the crown. He also collaborated extensively with the Cistercians, as we mentioned, really pushing economic growth, especially in agriculture in those newly settled southern areas, transforming wild lands into productive territories.
And there's that intriguing aspect of his rule we touched on.
Oh.
His policy toward the Jewish community. He famously appointed the chief rabbi, Yahya ben Yahya, as his tax collector. That wasn't common practice at the time, was it?
No, it certainly wasn't typical across Christian Europe, and it truly highlights his pragmatism. He recognized the value of their administrative skills, their financial acumen, their networks. It set a precedent for generally positive relations that continued under his successors for quite some time. This wasn't about modern tolerance, maybe, but it was about effective governance, using the best people for the job.
And then finally, the culmination of decades of diplomatic effort.
Yeah.
That ultimate international legitimacy arrived in 1179.
Yes. The ultimate seal of approval. Pope Alexander III issued the Papal Bull Manifestus Probatum, a huge moment. This official decree from the highest religious authority in Western Europe finally, formally recognized Portugal as an independent kingdom and Afonso as its first king.
Took long enough.
It certainly did. The bull praised him as an intrepid destroyer of the enemies of Christians and a good son of the church. It solidified Portugal's place on the European map, though interestingly, it did come with an annual tribute, a small payment, due to the Holy See, a price for recognition. But still, this was a full 36 years after that Conference of Zamora we mentioned. Just highlights the sheer tenacity required.
So after 1169, with his injury, his children really stepped up, didn't they? Sancho and Teresa assumed crucial regency roles.
They did. With Afonso less mobile, his son Sancho increasingly handled military affairs, while his daughter Teresa took on more administrative duties. Even his illegitimate son, Fernando Afonso, played a significant role at court during this later period. It became more of a family affair, managing the kingdom.
And he lived long enough to witness one final major challenge.
Yes, the great Almohad invasion of 1184. And surprisingly, Fernando II of Leon, his old rival, his son-in-law, the one who captured him at Badajoz, actually came to Portugal's aid this time.
Really? After all that?
Politics makes strange bedfellows, right? Their combined effort led to the death of the attacking Almohad Caliph on the battlefield near Santarém and the subsequent retreat of the invasion force. A powerful demonstration that even Iberian rivals could sometimes unite against a common external threat.
Afonso Henriques finally died on December 6, 1185. At the remarkable age of, 76? In Coimbra, where he's buried in the Mosteiro de Santa Cruz.
That's right. And his epitaph, it speaks volumes. It reads, "Here lies another Alexander or another Julius Caesar." Gives you a sense of his lasting image. Military genius, defender of the faith. He's remembered in Portugal by these powerful, enduring titles: O Conquistador, the Conqueror; Rei Fundador, the Founder King, and sometimes O Magno, the Great.
And his legacy isn't just in the history books or the stone monuments. It's deeply intertwined with these powerful legends that resonate even today. We mentioned Egas Moniz' incredible loyalty earlier, but there's also that legend about his supposed promise to Afonso VII, bringing his family with ropes around their necks. Whether it happened or not, it highlights that medieval ideal of noble honor, of commitment unto death.
Exactly. And another iconic legend, maybe my favorite too, is Martim Moniz. The story goes that during the final assault on Lisbon, he saw a gate closing and literally held it open with his own body, sacrificing himself so his comrades could storm the city.
An incredible image of self-sacrifice.
Absolutely. And even if it's an embellishment, maybe it didn't happen quite like that, it resonates so deeply within the Portuguese national narrative. It symbolizes unimaginable courage and sacrifice for the nation. These stories, whether pure fact or folklore colored by time, they really underscore how Afonso's actions and the actions of those around him became the very bedrock of Portuguese identity, and they continue to inspire.
So we've journeyed through the really quite incredible life of Afonso Henriques. We've witnessed his transformation from a rebellious young count into the recognized founder of a nation. His story is just a testament to military prowess, sure, but also political shrewdness and just an unyielding will to independence, achieved through this amazing blend of strategic battles and incredibly shrewd, patient diplomacy. It's truly amazing when you step back and reflect on how one individual's singular determination navigating this complex web of family feuds, regional power politics, or religious crusades could literally draw new borders on a map and define the destiny of an entire people for centuries.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? And it raises an important question, I think, for all of us when we look at these foundational myths and pivotal historical moments that define nations. How much of their enduring power actually comes from the verifiable historical facts? And how much comes from the compelling narratives, the legends, the stories that people choose to believe and pass down? What does that tell us about the very nature of national identity, both back then and maybe even now?